South Africa's richest metro is in ruins, according to Joburg Mayor Mpho Phalatse, but she's confident she has a turnaround plan. The mayor may have spoken a good game in her maiden State of the City address, but how will she turn those words into action? Let's find out. Mayor Mpho Phalatse joining us now in studio. Thanks for your time, Mayor. I appreciate it. So that's the key thing that many people want to know. You actually did have good points, good plans, but how long will it take to actually turn things around?
Well, I mean, that's a very generic question. It depends on which aspect of this.
Let's start with electricity, our biggest concern.
Right. Okay, so we've got a plan to sort out the electricity crisis. We are going out on tender to bring in more players into the space. As you know, we're heavily dependent on Eskom for electricity supply. We currently have two suppliers. It's Eskom on the one hand, and it's the Kelvin power station on the other hand. Kelvin will be decommissioned in about 2 years. We've just extended our contract with them by 2 years to secure supply for that time until they're decommissioned. But that supply is at risk, so we already need to factor in a contingency plan. But also our reliance on Eskom is problematic, you know, with load shedding on the one hand, but all the various issues in areas like Soweto, for instance, are also not assisting, so we do need to take over those areas. But City Power will need suppliers. And what we'll be doing is we'll be opening up for independent power producers. So MMC Markelson is already busy with that procurement process to get independent power producers to offer us proposals to partner with the city. We will be charging them a wheeling tariff, so the idea is that they supply the energy and they use our infrastructure to distribute. And the city still generates a bit of revenue from that because we don't want to put our revenue at risk as well. Electricity is quite a big revenue driver. So that's the plan. But next month, we will be hosting an energy indaba. Now, the idea is to bring in everybody in the energy space, whether you're an academic, an innovator, a supplier. We also want to look at law enforcement around electricity supplies. You know, we've had challenges with theft and vandalism of our electricity infrastructure. We used to use copper cables exclusively, and then we thought, let's move to aluminium. Perhaps there'll be, you know, less of a demand for aluminium and we'll see less theft and vandalism. But what we're actually seeing is that the aluminium is still in a copper casing, and so they still steal it. We do need to have those conversations, see what's available in the market. We need to deal with that because we can't keep investing if we're losing at the same time. We've got a backlog, a historical backlog because of a lack of maintenance and repairs over the years. We need to address that, but we need to secure what we have and make sure that we're actually progressively improving and stabilizing supply.
So that's a lot that needs to happen. By when, which year, can you say that Joburg will not have to rely on Eskom to supply electricity?
So we're going out on tender as we speak. The energy indaba is happening next week. There'll be more requests for proposals. It will be an ongoing process. We want to see as many players as possible. We want them to compete because as they compete, then they become better, but they also compete with pricing. As you know, we've got challenges with payments and revenue collection where electricity is concerned, particularly in our lower socioeconomic status areas. And we do want to reduce the cost of supplying electricity to our residents. And so that's going to be one of the benefits of this initiative.
I'm still waiting for the answer. By when will you not have to rely on Eskom?
Well, it's progressive.
Yeah.
It is progressive. Ask me after the energy indaba. I think I'll be able to give you a definite answer because we do need to have conversations. We need to engage with the market, find out what's available out there, how soon they can deliver, and so on. But in the meantime, we are going out on tender and we're starting to get more players in. But let's speak after the indaba, or better yet, come to the indaba.
Okay. So let's talk about electricity in a different way when it comes to City Power, because there are many failures in that regard in terms of infrastructure that's old and wasn't properly maintained, and that now means that there are areas in Joburg that are affected by load shedding even after the lights are switched on because of the surge in power and stations tripping, etc. It's frustrating, right? I mean, no one wants to be living in their houses with no electricity for days. How is that going to be immediately addressed? I spoke to Markelson about that, the MMC, and he said that it's going to take time. And you know, I'm sure you as a citizen is tired of hearing from Eskom, oh, it's going to take time, it's years of corruption, looting, blah, 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 blah. What can you say to Joburg residents about that? How can you fix that? Because that's right now within your scope.
MMC needs money. Okay, he needs money to address the historical backlog, because effectively he needs new infrastructure, he needs to upgrade the existing infrastructure. And we've had a look and we've seen that there are opportunities in the money that's already in the system. A good example is the USDG grant. Historically, we've appropriated that money only for housing projects, but actually Treasury says no, it's an urban settlement grant. So whatever that goes into urban settlements, you can actually use it towards. So we've realized that we can actually appropriate some of that money towards infrastructure, towards roads, infrastructure, water infrastructure, electricity infrastructure. We've invited Treasury to come and sit with us and take us through all the various grants, because we realize we're not capitalizing on what's available, and this is free money that's coming from Treasury. That's going to really be a groundbreaking exercise, because after that then we'll be able to attract all the grant funding that we need. But important is for us to be able to spend that money, and Treasury said to us, hey, we're willing to give you as much as you need, but you need to demonstrate that you can spend it. So there's a lot of internal workings to make sure that we improve operational efficiencies, to make sure that we are spending money that we are getting, so that nothing is returned and we can get more. When we spend, we're able to, at adjustment budget phase, even attract what is unspent from other municipalities, and that's the key. I mean, we're not trying to take money from other municipalities, but if there's money to be taken, we want Joburg to be first to get it. We're one of the biggest metros, we've got the biggest budget, we're a big economic driver in the country. And so yes, those are some of the conversations we're having internally as to where can we get extra money from to start investing more in infrastructure. So ideally, our infrastructure spend as a proportion of our total budget should be somewhere between 10 and 20%. We're currently at 9.8%. So we're not even where we're supposed to be. And we need to start increasing that. But that means we need to have the difficult conversations. Where is our budget going?
Yeah.
There's a lot of unfunded mandates in a municipality. A lot of things that are not core municipal functions that we've taken on because we want to render services to our residents, but we're actually being ripped off a lot of times by other spheres of government. A good example is health care. We run the clinics in the city. Do you know that we actually spend more on running clinics than what the province is spending as the core mandate holder? Something's wrong with that picture, and that's a conversation I'd really like to have with Treasury, because I don't get a sense that there's an oversight role that Treasury is playing with regards to functions that get delegated. So it's different when you devolve a function, because then it goes directly from equitable share, the money comes directly to you. But if it's a delegated function, you wait for it to go to provincial treasury, and then you get a subsidy, and often it's not enough. And we need to have the tough conversation about unfunded mandates. Yes, we want to render the service to our residents, but it is taking away from core municipal functions. So what do? Do we let them go at the expense of residents? Or do we have a conversation with Treasury and with the mandate holder about doing right by our residents and making sure that the adequate funding is filtering through to municipal level?
Another issue for Joburg residents is water coming out of our taps. And I've heard this from so many residents. One of my producers, Nathan, was saying to us, ask the mayor about water. We have constant water cuts in Hursthill and surrounding areas, and we're always told we're working on it, we're working on it, and we're working on it. Like, how do you actually fix that as well? Because you're dealing with the poor maintenance of infrastructure again, and now you're stuck with actually dealing with it and dealing with angry citizens.
There's issues on the supply side. So again, we buy water from Rand Water, and we redistribute the water through our networks. Yes, there's problems with our networks, and that's also because of historic neglect and a lack of investment in water infrastructure. We need to invest in reservoirs, we need to invest in pipe replacement. A lot of our pipes are very old, they leak, and we lose a lot of water. But when there's issues with Rand Water, they do affect our residents because of that codependency. And I think what's important is to strengthen communication. I did have Rand Water in my office together with Eskom, because we're looking at how we can coordinate better our communication and our working relations, so that our residents are not caught between us and the bulk supplier. So that's the one thing. But I know that at a national level, for instance, the Democratic Alliance is really pushing for devolution of some of these functions. We should not have to depend on rainwater to supply water to our residents, and that will be the ultimate win. But in the interim, we have to work with what we have. At a local level, our responsibility is to make sure that the distribution networks are upgraded, well taken care of. We invest in reservoirs, that there's adequate reserves in all communities, so that even if Rand Water has challenges on their end, our residents are not immediately affected.
But when will that happen? When will we get to that point where we're not going to have these issues over and over again?
Well, I did announce yesterday that we will be investing 2.8 billion in the next 3 years in our water and sewer infrastructure. Look, the backlog is massive. It's been a backlog of over 27 years, so it's not going to be turned around, not even in one term of office. But when we open up to private sector players as well, it helps us because we're able to save a little and focus on what we need to do. So we need to employ all different strategies. On the one hand, yes, increase investment. On the other hand, allow more players in so they can assist you, but learn to spend the free money that you're getting, get more money in, and all those strategies will assist us ultimately to achieve.
Let's talk about how you're dealing with illegal foreigners in the city and how you're dealing with cleaning out the Johannesburg city. That's been something that's been promised to residents for years. And then you have the new kids on the block, I should say, Operation Dudula, that's doing their own things in the city of Johannesburg and other parts of the province, even going into KwaZulu-Natal. What's your plan there to deal with that? Because it is leading to some sort of xenophobia in the city.
We do not agree in any form of xenophobia, Afrophobia, or any vigilantism that's going on in the city. Whenever there's such happening, we do deploy the JMPD to go and deal with it from a policing perspective. But yes, we recognize that there is a challenge and there is a need for government to mediate. At a policy level, as the city, we're busy reviewing the migration policy of the city. It's outdated. It doesn't talk to the current issues, and that is currently under review. It will come to mayoral committee very soon, and it will go out for public participation. That is where we'll be engaging all residents of Johannesburg and saying, what would you like to see happen? But I often want to remind people that it's not the role of the city to regularize migration. It is the role of the Home Affairs, and it is a national function. I'm happy to see there's movement within the National Department of Home Affairs in the right direction, that there's a firm hand to say, it's a time over for criminality, and we need to clean up and make sure that any immigrant in Johannesburg or in South Africa is legal in the country and that they abide by the laws of the country. But how do we deal with the ones who are here? What I know is that there's different types of migrants. Not every migrant is a criminal. Some migrants actually are here because of acts of criminality. Some of them would have been trafficked even into the country. And it's so important when you approach this matter to be sober about it. And it's so important to profile the different types of migrants and deal with them accordingly, and not label everyone as a criminal, because that is xenophobic, and we're not going to stand for it and we're not going to support it. So that's the approach.
But how do you protect people who are being targeted in this way in your city? Or are you just saying that's not up to us to do, that's police and Home Affairs?
We do actually have a whole function within social development. Social development has a migration unit. We've got what we call the Joburg Migration Advisory Council and the Joburg Migration Advisory Panel. The advisory panel is basically all the different diaspora. It's where they discuss their issues. So if they need protection, they'd be able to come to the advisory council and say, we need protection, as an example. So those structures are in place. We've got migrant help desks in all the regions of the city, and these are our help desks where we service migrants of all types, including saying to them, you need to go to Home Affairs to sort out your papers, including saying to them, if you need to be deported, there's repatriation services through the IOM, as an example. We can link you up. So those kinds of services are in place, and we will continue to service our migrants in Johannesburg that way.
Yes, you tried to get rid of 130 workers in the city of Joburg, right? And I see today that they've actually won the first round in their fight to regain their jobs. What's your next move?
They have not won the first round to regain their jobs. I'm really frustrated at how this is being wrongfully reported on. So yes, what has happened is the court said it must go back to the bargaining council because it was still at the bargaining council. What then happened today still is the bargaining council has dismissed the case, which means that the city can go ahead and implement the resolution of council. So that's where we are at the moment. We're actually getting ready to implement the resolution of council.
Yeah. So they will be out of office by when?
Well, the contracts end, the FTC fixed-term contracts end at the end of April.
Yeah.
And that is what's going to happen. Anything that happened outside of that, we don't recognize because it was irregular and it was an act of corruption.
And just remind people the reason you actually took that step, because it's obviously left many people frustrated, because when you work for a city or any government in any province, you know, whether it's the ANC, DA or whatever, because these people say that they feel they were targeted because they were brought in by the ANC administration. So what was that process and your thinking behind getting rid of these people?
Firstly, we're not getting rid of people. We're just regularizing an irregular process. Fortunately, I've been an MMC in the previous administration. I was an MMC from 2016 to 2019, and I would have had political staff in my office. Firstly, we need to differentiate between political staff in political offices and staff in the administration. And there is a separation between the administration and the political offices. Now, in a political office, your appointment is linked to the political term of office of your political principal. If it's 5 years, you're in office for 5 years. If it's 3 years, you're in office for 3 years. I had staff in my office who, when I left in 2019, when we lost the city, lost their jobs. In fact, they were told by the ANC that they have to go. You know, and this was during COVID, mind you. Remember, it was November 2019. They had 6 months to still be in the system while figuring out whether they're reapplying or they're leaving. And in that time of COVID, they lost their jobs. You didn't hear us make noise about it because we understood it's a political appointment. So exactly the same thing is happening here. I don't understand why they're using a different measuring stick.
Well, maybe it's just them putting out a different message compared to what you did. Mayor, last question to you, and this is your message to reassure residents that they're going to live better lives in this city, maybe even in the next year. Is that even possible in terms of the improvements you're promising?
It definitely is. I think what I need to explain as well is that we did inherit plans and budgets that were already in place. As much as we've had an adjustment budget, you can only adjust so much. It's only on the 1st of July that we'll be able to really give full expression to our plans and our budgets and what we believe that our residents need. We're currently going through the IDP consultation processes, hearing from all communities. We're also doing targeted stakeholders. We've done business. We'll do the construction sector, women, youth, persons with disabilities. We'll even do the LGBTIQA plus community and various other targeted stakeholders in an aim to get inputs from everyone and make sure every constituency is represented in the plans and the budgets that we will put forward. And only then can we really be held fully accountable. And I'm not saying we can't be held accountable now, but we have very little control over the plans and the budgets that we're running with now, because legally we have to run with them until the end of the financial year, which is the 30th of June. So come 1st of July, we should be able to really bring big changes that our residents will really begin to feel that there's a new administration in town. We are for them. The team of MMCs is great. They're energized and they're really passionate about seeing Joburg saved.
And Alex? Remember that plan you had for Alex? When are we seeing some movement there?
Definitely very soon. Yes, I can never forget Alexandra. That's where my career started.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. And by the way, I was saying to Sally yesterday, your hat at the State of the City address, very interesting choice. So I was hoping you would bring it in today so we could show it off.
Well, the photos are there. I was asked to wear a hat by protocol. So but I love the hat.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Johannesburg Mayor Mpho Phalatse.